Steve Harvey was sitting on his big red chair, smiling and talking to his audience, like he always does on his talk show. People were laughing and clapping, but something happened that no one expected. Suddenly, the screen behind him showed a video message. The crowd went quiet. It was from Ibrahim Traoré, the young leader of Burkina Faso. He wore his army uniform, and his eyes looked kind and strong. "Mr. Steve Harvey," Traoré said, "you have made so many people laugh, but more than that, you have made people believe in themselves. In my country, we watch your videos. We see hope in your smile." Steve sat up straight, listening carefully. His eyes started to get wet. His smile faded, and he covered his mouth with his hand. Traoré continued, "I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being a light. Even when people don't know you, they feel your love. You don't just tell jokes, you lift spirits. You help us remember our worth." Now Steve couldn't hold it in. Tears ran down his cheeks. He took off his glasses and wiped his face. The crowd gasped softly. Some people in the audience also had tears in their eyes. Steve tried to speak, but his voice was shaking. That means everything to me," he said, almost whispering. "I didn't know." The video message wasn't finished. Traoré leaned forward and said something that made the room completely silent. Traoré leaned forward, looked straight into the camera and said, "You are more than a talk show host, Steve. You are a brother. You are a father. You are a guide to millions of young African boys who grew up with nothing but dreams. Just like I did." Steve's lips trembled. He put his hand over his heart. The camera zoomed in slowly on his face. You could see the tears sliding down his cheeks, one after another. The audience was silent, listening, feeling every word. Traoré continued, "When I was young, we had no electricity, but someone once brought a video of your show on a small screen powered by a car battery. That night we laughed so hard, but it wasn't just laughter, it gave me courage. You gave me the courage to believe I could be someone." Steve looked down and shook his head slowly, still crying. He whispered, "I had no idea. I didn't know I reached that far." The crowd started clapping gently, not loud, just soft claps full of respect. One woman in the front row wiped her eyes. A young man in the back stood up slowly and clapped too. Traoré's voice was calm but full of emotion. "Now I am president, but I have not forgotten where I came from, and I will never forget the man whose words reached a small village in the dark. Steve Harvey." Steve stood up slowly. He looked at the camera and said, "Traoré, young man, if you're watching this, I want you to know." Steve took a deep breath. His voice cracked as he spoke. "I want you to know, you just gave me one of the greatest gifts of my life. I thought I was just making people laugh. I didn't know I was helping someone like you become who you are today." He paused. The room stayed quiet. You could hear sniffles from the audience. No music, no sound effects, just real, raw emotions. Steve wiped his eyes again and looked at the camera. "Young man," he said softly, "you are the light now. You're doing something powerful. You're standing up for your people, for your country, and you're doing it with heart." Then something else happened. A producer ran to Steve and handed him a phone. Steve looked confused for a second. Then his eyes grew wide. He looked at the crowd and said, "He's calling me. Right now. Traoré is on the phone." The crowd gasped and started clapping loudly. Steve put the phone on speaker. A deep voice came through. It was Traoré. "Brother Steve," he said, "I'm watching. I had to call you." Steve's hands were shaking as he held the phone. "Oh my God," he said, trying to smile through his tears. "You watching this live?" "Yes," Traoré said. "And I just want to say, from one son of Africa to another, I love you, brother." Steve dropped his head, overwhelmed with emotion. He could barely speak. The crowd stood up, giving a long, loud standing ovation. Some were crying. Some were shouting his name. Steve finally looked up again and whispered, "I love you too, man. I love you too." Steve held the phone close to his heart for a moment, like it was something precious. Then he brought it back to his ear and said, "Brother, I don't even know what to say. You calling me like this on live TV. It's something I'll never forget. Traoré's voice came through again, calm and full of love. I didn't want the world to forget who we are. We are not just Africans. We are kings, we are builders, we are dreamers. And people like you, Steve, remind us that we matter, even when the world tries to ignore us. The audience went silent again, not because they were told to, but because they were listening deeply. Every word was like music to their hearts. Steve smiled softly through his tears. I never knew my jokes could go all the way to a village in Burkina Faso, he said, looking around the studio. But God knew. God knew it mattered. Traoré continued, I know your past wasn't easy. I know you worked hard, slept in your car, had doors closed in your face, but you kept going. That's strength. That's the same strength we need in Africa today. Steve nodded slowly. You're right, he said. I did sleep in my car. I was homeless, but I kept believing. And now hearing that I helped you, man, it makes everything worth it. The camera moved around the audience. People hugging, some holding hands, many crying quietly. No one wanted to miss a single word. Then Traoré's voice said something that made Steve freeze again. I have a personal invitation for you, Steve. I want you to come to Burkina Faso. I want you to see the people who love you, who learned from you, who see you as family. Steve stood still for a second. He blinked, as if he wasn't sure he heard right. You want me to come to Burkina Faso? He asked, his voice full of surprise. Yes, Traoré answered. I want you to walk through the same villages where your voice brought laughter. I want the children to see the man who helped change the way we see ourselves. You may not be African by birth, but you are African by spirit. The crowd went wild. Clapping, cheering, some shouting, go, Steve, go. Steve looked around the studio, then back at the phone. He smiled through the tears. Brother, it would be the honor of my life, he said. I've been to a lot of places, but I've never been called home like this. You are home, Steve, Traoré replied gently. And when you come, we will welcome you the way we welcome a son who has been away for too long. Steve sat back down slowly, holding the phone to his chest. His voice cracked again. Man, I never thought a day on this show would turn into something like this. He looked at the audience. All my life, I tried to make people laugh because I didn't want them to feel the pain I once felt. But now I realize God was using me in ways I didn't even see. All the way to Africa. The camera showed audience members wiping their faces, nodding in agreement. Some held hands, touched by the moment. Just then, a crew member walked up quietly and handed Steve a small box. This came for you just now, she said. Steve opened the box slowly. Inside was a wooden carving of the African continent, with his face carved inside the shape. On the back, it read, To our brother Steve Harvey, from the people of Burkina Faso. Steve stared at the wooden carving in silence. His fingers gently traced the lines around his face carved inside the shape of Africa. His lips trembled again. He held it up for the audience to see. Look at this, he said softly. You don't get things like this every day. You don't get moments like this every day. The audience leaned in, quiet and full of emotion. You could feel it in the air. Something sacred was happening. Steve stood up again, holding the carving close to his chest. This right here, he said. This is more than a gift. This is a piece of my soul being returned to me. I didn't even know something was missing. Until now. Traoré's voice came back through the phone. It is our way of saying thank you. In our culture, we carve things not just with hands, but with love. And this one was made by a young boy named Yakuba, who watches your show under a mango tree. Steve's mouth dropped open slightly. A boy made this? Yes, Traoré replied. He wanted you to have it. He said, tell Mr. Steve that when I grow up, I want to talk to people like he does. I want to make them feel big, even if they are small. Steve sat down again, this time with the carving in his lap. His voice shook as he said, please tell Yakuba. He already is big, bigger than he knows. The audience clapped again. No shouting this time, just quiet, heartfelt claps. Steve looked at the camera, his voice low but full of fire. To my brothers and sisters in Burkina Faso and all across Africa, I hear you now. I see you, and I promise, I'm coming. Suddenly, a small voice came through the phone. Hello? Mr. Steve. Steve's eyes widened. Who's that? He asked. It's me, Yakuba. Steve froze. For a moment, he didn't say a word. His lips parted, but nothing came out. He just looked around the room, stunned. Then he leaned forward slowly, as if trying to hear better. Did you just say, Yakuba? Yes, the little voice replied, shy and soft. It's me. I'm the boy who made the carving. Are you really coming to visit us? Steve swallowed hard. His eyes filled again with fresh tears. Yes, Yakuba. I'm coming. I'm really coming. The whole audience gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others began crying all over again. It was like watching a dream unfold, right there on live TV. Thank you, Mr. Steve, Yakuba said in his gentle voice. When I grow up, I want to make people happy like you. I want to talk to them on a stage and tell them they are good, even if they feel bad. Steve smiled through his tears. Yakuba, you're already doing that. You made this carving with love, and you touched my heart. That's bigger than any stage in the world. The boy was quiet for a second, then said, I made another one for you, but it's not finished. Can I give it to you when you come? Steve nodded quickly, wiping his eyes again. Yes, you can. I would be honored. Then Yakuba said something that made everyone hold their breath. I prayed for you every night, he whispered. Even when you didn't know me. I said, God, please keep Mr. Steve safe, because I love you like an uncle. Steve covered his face with both hands and broke down crying again. Big, heavy tears fell. He tried to speak, but couldn't. The audience stood up again. This time, there was no cheering, just respect. Just people standing still with hands over their hearts. Traore came back on the line and said gently, Steve, this is what love looks like, across oceans, across skin, across time. Steve slowly lowered his hands from his face. His eyes were red, but his smile was full of light. He looked straight into the camera and said softly, This is the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to me on this stage. He took a deep breath and spoke gently into the phone. Yakuba, listen to me, nephew. I don't care how far you are. I don't care how long it takes. I'm coming to you. I'm going to sit with you under that mango tree, and we'll talk. Just you and me. The boy giggled shyly. Okay, Uncle Steve. Everyone in the studio smiled at the same time. It was like the whole room had become a giant heartbeat, full of love and unity. Steve turned to the audience. You see, you never know who's watching. You never know who's listening. That's why it matters how you live. That's why it matters what you say. He held the wooden carving high again. This little piece of Africa, it just became the biggest blessing of my life. Then something new flashed on the big screen behind him. Footage from Burkina Faso. Villagers gathered around a small outdoor TV, under trees, sitting on logs and wooden benches. They were all watching his show this very moment live. Some were clapping. Others had tears in their eyes. Steve stood still, staring at the screen. Look at them, he whispered. That's my family now. Traore's voice returned one last time. Steve, when you land in our country, drums will welcome you. Women will sing. The children will dance. Because you're not just visiting, you're returning home. Steve nodded slowly. Then I'll bring something with me, he said. What will you bring? Traore asked. Steve smiled, tears still running down his face. My heart. The audience broke into soft, warm applause. It wasn't loud or wild, it was deep, real. Everyone felt like they were part of something special, something bigger than just a TV show. Steve looked around the studio and whispered, This is the moment I'll tell my grandkids about. He then turned toward the big screen showing the live feed from Burkina Faso. More villagers had gathered now. Young boys holding sticks, girls in colorful dresses, mothers with babies tied to their backs. elders sitting quietly on wooden stools. And in the middle of them all, a boy, small, smiling, proud, stood next to the TV. It was Yakuba. Steve's eyes locked on him. "There he is," he said, voice cracking again. "That's my boy." Yakuba waved at the screen. Steve waved back. Then something unexpected happened. From the back of the studio, a drummer slowly walked in. He began tapping gently on a traditional African drum. Another followed with a kora, the sound soft and rich like a heartbeat. The music filled the studio, not loud, but deep and soulful. Steve looked around, amazed. "What is this?" A voice from backstage answered. "A surprise gift from the African Cultural Center in New York. They heard the broadcast and wanted to honor this moment with music from home." Steve stood silently. The rhythm touched every soul in the room. The screen behind him now showed villagers dancing slowly in Burkina Faso, matching the same beat from the studio. Steve turned to the camera again. "This is unity," he said, his voice full of emotion. "This is what the world needs. Not more noise, not more hate, but moments like this. Connection, love, family." Yakuba's voice came gently from the speaker again. "Uncle Steve, when you come, can I show you my village?" Steve smiled big, heart wide open. "Yes, Yakuba," he said. "You can show me everything." The music continued softly in the background, like the heartbeat of the moment. Steve sat down again, slowly, holding the wooden carving on his lap like a treasure. He looked overwhelmed, but in the most beautiful way. He leaned toward the microphone, his voice low and warm. "Yakuba, when I come to your village, I don't just want to see your home. I want to meet your mama. I want to sit with your elders. I want to eat what y'all eat. I want to feel what you feel every day." "Yes, Uncle Steve," Yakuba answered with joy in his voice. "We will cook too in sauce. And my grandma will sing for you." Steve laughed, wiping his eyes again. "Two en sauce? Man, I don't even know what that is, but I'm ready for it." The audience chuckled along, but it wasn't just laughter, it was connection. Pure, deep connection. Then something happened that surprised even Steve. A young girl from the audience stood up, holding a small handmade sign. She had written in big, careful letters, "Steve plus YSOUBE equals family." The cameras showed the sign and Steve saw it on the screen. He covered his heart again and mouthed, "Thank you." Traore's voice returned one more time, calm and powerful. "Brother Steve, this is more than a moment. It's a seed of love, a seed of unity. We must water it with kindness so it grows strong." Steve nodded, looking into the camera. "You're right, President Traore, and I promise you, I won't let it dry up. I'll water it. I'll protect it. I'll keep showing up." Suddenly, Yakuba said one more thing. "Uncle Steve, can I ask one more question?" Steve smiled big and leaned closer to the phone. "Anything, little man. Go ahead." The whole world seemed to lean in with him. Yakuba asked, "When you come, will you bring a book? A book about your life? So I can read it and learn how to be strong too." Steve paused. His eyes softened even more. He held the phone close and said, "Yes, Yakuba, I'll bring you a book. I'll write it just for you. And not just about my life, but about your courage too." The whole studio clapped gently. Some people were openly crying now. The moment had grown into something sacred, bigger than fame, bigger than television. It was about heart, about humanity. Steve stood up one last time, the wooden carving in one hand, the phone in the other. He looked straight into the camera and said, "This little boy, this one voice, reminded me that what we do with love travels far, further than we know." He continued, "Yakuba, I'll see you soon. And when I come, I won't come empty-handed. I'll come with stories, with hugs, and with my whole heart." Then Yakuba's voice replied softly, "I'll wait for you, Uncle Steve. I'll tell everyone. My uncle is coming home." The screen slowly faded to black, but not before showing one last shot. Yakuba waving under a big mango tree, surrounded by smiling villagers. The studio lights dimmed, the drums faded out, And Steve Harvey, standing alone on stage, whispered the final words. Sometimes the people you never meet are the ones who know your soul best. Love, kindness, and purpose travel farther than we can ever imagine. Even the smallest act, like making someone laugh, can change lives across oceans. Never underestimate the power of your voice, your story, or your heart. Someone out there is listening and growing because of you.